international voice star Marc Scott with us and in conversation with Ashwin Mushran.
I'm Ashwin, so it's really nice to meet you for the first time. I've seen your stuff online. You post a whole bunch of stuff on marketing, your journey, and from the perspective of the mistakes that you also made in the past, I think, is what you say. But before I start, I'm just going to introduce who you are. I'm sure that's been done to you many times, but I'm just going to do it again.
Yeah, no worries.
Marc Scott is a full-time voice actor and a voiceover business and marketing coach. As the original everyday VOpreneur, I like that term, he serves as a guide through the business of voiceover. His clients include Amazon, Microsoft, Chevrolet, and Emirates National Bank of Dubai. And he's also the host of the Everyday VOpreneur podcast, which offers up actionable, practical advice on the business of voiceover every week. So that's Marc, that's you, and I can see your lighting is much better than me. I was somewhere else, I had to rush somewhere else, so I couldn't fix that, but as long as we can hear each other, I think that's fine. First of all, I just want to ask, how did you get into voiceover? As far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's anybody who's a voiceover artist in the world who was born saying, I'm going to do voiceover. I believe that it's actually something that's a kind of accidental business. People just fall into it personally. I mean, I also accidentally fell into it. So I just want to know from your perspective, how did that happen?
My story is actually very similar to a lot of other voice actors, particularly in North America. I was a radio guy who lost his job. That's where a lot of us start. In North America in particular, the radio industry has been changing a lot over the years. There's been a lot of downsizing that has happened over the years. And so I was a guy who had been on the air in broadcast through radio and television for off and on for 2 decades. And when my last radio job came to an end, I said, that's enough. I'm done with radio and it's time to do something else. And I had been doing voiceover on the side for a number of years. I didn't ever think of it as a business necessarily. It was just when you're in radio, opportunities often present themselves. And I decided when my last radio job ended that I was going to see if I could make this work, if I could turn it into a business, because I really didn't want to go back to radio. So that was in 2012, was my first year full-time in voiceover. And I've been doing it ever since and growing my business ever since.
That's 10 years. And at the time, how many radio stations do you work with?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. Over the years, I had worked for probably about half a dozen radio stations, and I had hosted or worked on probably close to half a dozen television shows over the years as well.
Okay. And when you finally decided to move to voiceover, was there then a sudden difference from that radio broadcast voice to suddenly having to adapt to other kinds of voicing? Because that whole radio voice, the broadcast is a very common theme around from companies to people. They like that radio sound, but when you do actually go into the voiceover business, you find there are different areas of it, and that radio sound always doesn't translate into that.
I have often told voice actors that who are coming from the broadcast side, you would have an easier time getting started in this industry if you had previously worked as a farmer, because when you come from radio, when you come from broadcast, whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not, whether you admit it or not, you do have a radio voice, so to speak. And I have spent the better part of 10 years and many, many thousands of dollars on coaching, trying to ultimately get rid of that announcer voice, which still creeps up every once in a while. I think anybody that has been doing voiceover for more than 5 minutes has seen the directions and the specs that say, conversational and then non-announcer written in giant capital letters, right? Nobody wants that anymore. And so you would think that there's a relation between broadcast and voiceover, but the reality is that it can actually be a lot harder to come from the broadcast space into voiceover just because of that one thing.
I think in India, a lot of clients and a lot of companies always, a lot of agencies, they always ask you, we want, especially you're talking about non-broadcast, but in India, they say, we don't want the voiceover to sound voiceover.
Yeah. Yep.
At the end of the day, you're still getting a voiceover. Even conversational is still a voiceover. It's not actual conversation in the way that we're talking. It's a certain kind of conversational. And I think a lot of people here also had to adapt to that whole area. It was a huge change, I think,
Yeah.
that happened even here. And we're also, as India, the voicing in India opens up to the international stage because of how we are now open on the internet or
Yep.
available to people out of the country. We're finding also people are asking for neutral voiceovers is
Yep.
what
Yep.
we're getting right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of that here too. And that's it. Everybody just wants, talk like you're talking to your best friend. Talk like you're having a conversation. Talk like you're chatting with your child or your spouse or whatever, right? And that's what everybody's looking for. And I think it really hit me. I was doing an in-studio session in Toronto a couple of years ago, and I had came in. They handed me the script. I nailed the 30-second script in the first take, and there's like 6 people on the other side of the glass, and they're all looking back at me, and they're like, "Okay, that was absolutely perfect. But now we need you to do it again, but just don't be perfect." And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, what somebody tells me that I did it perfect. I'm like, okay, great. I did a good job. Pat myself on the back, get on the train, head back home again.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, we need you to do it again, but sound less perfect. And that's, I think, a big part of it, right? Because generally speaking, when we're having a conversation with someone, it's not perfect. And it doesn't sound like we're reading off a script. And so that's where the acting side of it comes in. And I think that's something that I've seen too is we refer to it as voiceover, but more and more and more and more it's being referred to as voice acting, and the emphasis is being put on the acting, and that's a tough thing for a lot of people.
With regards to this, I went to drama school in London actually, and when I'd come back out here, I accidentally I shot an ad for someone. The director asked me, he said, "Hey, you got a nice voice." He said, "You want to try the voiceover?" And I did. It was really I'd never understood what it was going to be like in front of a mic when they said go cross and there's a pop and there's a click, and I'm like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yep.
And it was through that I started off. But I think my going to drama school over the years has really helped me in the voice business, which also led me to dubbing and other areas. But it allowed me to understand direction. And you have a home studio, obviously. I'm guessing that's what you built up over the years, and that's what you're able to deliver from. And I guess for many times, I know you have Source Connect, which is a big thing abroad, and people are just learning about it in India now, which is to do live sessions. But you must have also learned to understand and take direction when people just ask for the audio file to be sent.
Yeah, self-direction is a huge part of this because, I mean, for me, especially since the pandemic hit in 2020, like I have not been in a studio outside of my home since 2019. And so everything that I'm doing now is at home, and everything for the most part is self-directed. Yeah, every once in a while you get to do those directed sessions, but generally speaking, the audition portion is self-directed. And so you do have to be able to really start to get inside the head of producers and casting directors and be able to interpret, although that is a challenge in and of itself, because I always say, if you ask 100 people to give you their definition of conversational, you're going to get 100 different definitions. And if you ask somebody to give you 100 people to give you a definition of non-announcer, you're going to get 100 different definitions of non-announcer. And so I think the big thing for me was just learning what my signature voice was, and then just giving my best interpretation. And I mean, rule number 1 of voiceover when it comes to audition is send it and forget it, because otherwise you'll make yourself crazy. I think every one of us, if you've been in the industry long enough, at some point you will have recorded an audition and you will have walked out of the booth and thought, I nailed it. I absolutely nailed it. That is 100% what they're looking. And you've already, in your mind, you've already started figuring out how you're going to spend the money when the check comes. And then 2 months later, you hear the finished product that they hired somebody else for, and it's like a totally different direction from what you thought was exactly what the person was looking for. And that's the problem, right? It's all subjective. And so the best thing you can do is give it your best shot of authentic to you and to your voice, and then you send it and forget it.
So I'll give you some context. It's very different here in India, actually, and I mean, you may be interested, and you can also give your advice or perspective on it. Before the pandemic, it was pretty much all studio work,
Mhm.
as in studio. Home
Yep.
studios, I mean, very few people. Darpan, who's organizing the festival, has had his home studio for a
Sure.
while. I've also recorded in his studio many years ago, and I mean, a couple of times. But and just two or three other voice artists in India had home studios and
Yep.
a booth, or anything that was close to that. And then the pandemic hit, and all those studios shut.
Yep.
I mean, I went from 100 to zero. There were
Yep.
bookings for me. You did big brands. It was great.
Yep.
Life was good. And
Yep.
then life wasn't. And I had to suddenly sit down and think of what I could do. And I had decided to make myself a space.
Mhm.
Didn't know how to get that booth, but I made uh, I made sure the sound was good.
Yep.
The rest I could take care as long as the sound was good.
Yes.
Th-
Yep.
that was the first. And then I had to learn audio editing,
Yep.
because I didn't know audio editing at all.
Yep.
I mean, zero. And it was actually difficult. I had to go back to school, and I'm pretty sure that you must have learned the engineering part of it a while ago.
Yeah, so I mean, I had the good fortune of being able to do some of that stuff in my broadcast career and learning how to do some of the basics
Right,
of
okay,
that. And
yes,
so
yes,
so I was in a position where I could do that, but it's still, I mean, there's still voice actors every day that are having to learn, how do I set up my home studio? What equipment do I need? How do I edit? Fortunately in North America, we've got some amazing coaches and teachers that
yeah,
create classes that help voice actors learn how to do that stuff. And
yes.
I've worked with coaches in the past to help me to tweak my setup and make things a little bit better. But I mean, so for me, I've had a home studio since probably the early 2000s, and I was recording
Wow.
television shows. Like I was recording the voiceover for television shows that I hosted from my home studio. And so here it was, you go into major centers, you go into Toronto in Canada, you go into New York or Chicago or LA in the United States, and a lot of voice actors there did not have home studios, and everything was done in a studio. And then
Right.
when the pandemic hit, you've got agents that are going out and buying microphones and interfaces and sending them to their talent to be able to keep projects going and keep projects happening. And so there has been a shift. And like for me, any of the national based, like Canada wide stuff that I have the opportunity to audition for, most of that comes from an agent in Toronto, which is obviously the big city here in Canada. And pre-COVID, I used to have to go into the city to audition for a lot of that. And honestly, if anything, good, so to speak, has come from the pandemic, it's the fact that now a lot of these production houses and casting directors have accepted that, okay, voice actors do have home studios. Their home studios do sound good. They are able to do this stuff from home. And so it's actually saved me a lot of time now, because all of those auditions that I used to have to go into the city for, and that would take an entire day out of my schedule, now I get to do all of that
Just
stuff from home. And it is so much more convenient, but you do have to know what you're doing in order to be able to do that and do it well.
So you said that agents actually just sent interfaces and mics to as into voice actors, but some of these voice actors wouldn't have known
Yeah.
what to do
And
with that. I mean, I mean, the first time I got the interface and the mic, I mean, it took me a long time to figure
yeah,
out
what do I
figure
do
out
with
a bunch
this?
of
Yeah.
things. What do I do? And then, of course, I've bought another two interfaces since then and leveled up. But it's not something that happens like magic.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's the early stages of 2020. It was chaos for a lot of the industry over here, because of the fact that particularly large national projects and broadcast projects, promo, TV narration, things of that nature that had traditionally happened in the studio, they had to figure out a new way to do it. And so there was a massive learning curve that had to be overcome in a very short period of time in
Hmm.
order to keep things moving. And that was an advantage for guys like me who had a home studio and had been doing it for a long time, because I live in a smaller town, and so going into the studio wasn't something that I had to do a whole lot. So now it's a very different world. I mean, you mentioned about the internet has opened up, right? There's no more
Right.
borders anymore, right?
No.
I tell voice actors all the time from a marketing perspective that your target market for voiceover work is anywhere in the world where your language is spoken. There are no more
Correct.
borders. There are no more restrictions on anything like that. I work with clients around the globe on a regular basis, and I'm able to do that because I have my home studio and because of tools like Source Connect, or doing directed sessions via Zoom or Skype or things of that nature. And so, I mean, for me, that's been a huge blessing to be able to do that, because it's opened me up to so many more possibilities.
Possibilities around the. I guess initially you were. It was within North America. Then over a period of time, as you marketed yourself, there were people who got in touch with you slowly from around the world. Would that be correct?
Yeah, primarily. I mean, it started out that I was mostly working with contacts that I had developed over my career in broadcasting. And then when I started to figure out, hey, there's something here, I think the first place that I really started looking for opportunities was an online casting site. Many people will be familiar with the site voice123.com.
Correct.
And that site's been around for, I don't know, 20 years probably. And
yeah, I think Voice123 and Voices.com, they're the oldest and the biggest players, which shook up the industry at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a huge disruption to the industry, because up to that point, everything had been booked through agents and everything had been recorded in professional studios. And all of the sudden, we had this platform that democratized the industry. And now you've got anybody with a microphone and a decent home studio setup could potentially be auditioning for voiceover jobs. And so as I started using that online casting site and auditioning for opportunities on online casting, the question that I kept asking myself was, if there are people who are out there who are looking for voiceover and they're using a site like Voice123, there's got to be more people that are looking for voiceover that maybe don't know about this site yet. So how do I get in touch with those people? And so that's where I started to do direct marketing. And at first, you draw a circle on the map and you just start kind of working around your local area and some of the bigger cities around you or whatever. But there came a point where I started marketing across Canada. Then I started marketing across the United States. And then I was like, you know what? There's got to be some opportunities in Europe, or there's got to be some opportunities in the Middle East, or opportunities in Australia or New Zealand. And that was where the whole, literally anywhere in the world where my language is spoken is a potential opportunity for me to find voiceover work now.
And when we're talking about voice V123, even I was on it for a while. I made my money back.
Yep.
But sometimes looking for a specific, whether it's English with an Indian accent or neutral accent, lots of jobs are still geared toward British and American. I mean, most
Absolutely.
of them towards the American. So I'm really glad that I made my money back. But it's tough work auditioning.
Sure is.
It's tough. It's tough work auditioning on voices.com on this, but there are a lot of senior voice talent, I would say older voice talent, who are very. You're saying the internet is completely open now, who were very, very anti these sites.
Yes.
In the same way, you can give me your opinion on this. In the same way as people are anti sites like Fiverr and Upwork right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your opinion on it. As far as India goes, for example, someone like me, when I was trying to learn my audio engineering skills, trying to get better, I had set up a Fiverr profile just to understand whether people place orders, they do, and they did. And I also get to set my own rate and also say no to people saying, hey, no, this is not worth it for me. Yeah, this is worth it for me. Actually, for someone like me, an e-learning job in Fiverr, I get more there than I get for an e-learning job in India.
Yep.
But I see a lot of negativity to a lot of opposition and I would say a lot of bad mouthing. In India, we don't have agents. We don't have unions per se. So it's kind of a free for all. So everybody does their own thing.
Yep.
So I never knock down anybody how they find their work. So I just want to know what your perspectives on that are.
I think the industry here has gone through several major disruptions, and I think online casting was the first disruption, and we talked about it a minute ago, right? So once upon a time, all the jobs filtered through agents, and all of the jobs were recorded in a professional studio. And that's the way that the industry worked. And at that point in time, most of the work was also probably union based. And when online casting came along, that was a major disruption to the industry in North America and how the industry worked. All of a sudden, people didn't need to go through an agent or go out and find a casting director. You know, companies were able to connect with voice buyers, or voice buyers and voice artists were able to connect with each other directly. There was no longer a need for a middleman. So that was a big disruption to the industry. And for people who had worked in this industry for a long time and had only ever done voiceover in one way, yeah, it was really upsetting for them. I think the home studio was the next big disruption that happened to the industry, where, you know, we used to go into the studio to do everything. Now all of a sudden we can do it at home. That created a major disruption, but it also created major convenience. Projects are able to get done faster. Projects are able to be done more affordably because you're not paying, you know, $200 or $300 or $400 an hour for a studio, plus hiring an engineer and all of that sort of stuff. So it was a big disruption to the industry. I think the gig economy is another big disruption that's happening to the industry. I think where you see in North America in particular, I think where you see a lot of the pushback on the voice acting side is a site like Fiverr really does reduce the barriers to entry. It makes it so much more possible for somebody who thinks they want to do this or wants to give it a try. You know, you get the right equipment, you can get a USB microphone, and you probably already have a computer. And the barriers to entry are low now because agents have been disrupted, casting directors have been disrupted, professional studios have been disrupted. The challenge is we have to be careful that we don't, I guess, make ourselves extinct by fair market value. So, you know, let's say a project that traditionally has always been worth $500. And now you've got somebody who's able to set up their home studio and plug in their microphone, and they're able to do that project for $25. That's where you get the pushback. Mostly in North America, that's where you get the pushback, is because we don't want to devalue ourselves and we don't want to devalue our industry. I think it's great that there are so many different ways for voice actors to create opportunities for themselves. If you want to do online casting, do online casting. If you want to stay traditional and join the union and have several different agents and go around to studios and only focus on high-end work, then great. That's your option as well. If you want to do direct marketing and you want to email clients and use tools like social media, like LinkedIn, to make connections and develop relationships and build your client base that way, great. If you want to take advantage of freelance platforms like an Upwork or a Freelancer or a Fiverr for that gig economy, great. My big thing is just don't devalue yourself, don't devalue your work, and don't devalue your industry. Because at the end of the day, look, we've all still got a mortgage to pay or rent to pay. We've got families to feed. We've got electric bills and internet bills. And, you know, it costs money to buy equipment and it costs money to run a business. And if you drive the rates down so low, then it gets to a point where it's no longer sustainable for any of us. Sure. And then that's where I think the next big disruption is going to come, which is going to be in the form of AI.
Yes, that's it. So, like I said, in India, I mean, of course, when I'm in touch with some of the international voice client online on Facebook, on some of the groups, and somebody says, "Hey, I mean, you know, so a client has asked for this. What should I quote?" And everybody says, "You know, yeah, just check out, you know, GVA or Gravy for the Brain." Those rates don't kind of match in India, though.
No, not at all.
Yep. And I mean, that's really, it really sucks sometimes. I've done a couple of jobs for a couple of sites abroad, and for an Indian client, it's like 50% less than for an international one. When I know that some of the others are getting that much more, how do we deal with this when you talk about pricing and fare structure and things like that? Because, you know, $1 for us is a lot more than $1 for you.
Yep. And that's one of the challenges with all of this. I think that's the one thing that everybody's trying to navigate now, is because the economy is different in every country, right? I live in Canada. I do a lot of work. The bulk of my work comes from the United States, but the United States, Canada's economy is about 10% of the economy in the United States. And so the rates from the United States to Canada are hugely different. And that's just because the economy is hugely different. And so the GVAA rate guide, I've said this all along, and David Toback, who is the creator of the GVAA rate guide, he says it too. That rate guide is a US based rate guide for US talent working in the US. And it's really easy for even for a US based talent to go to a country like India and say, this is the GVAA rate guide, but it doesn't matter because the Indian economy is different from the United States economy, just like the rate won't fly in certain European countries, or you can't take that rate guide and apply it to New Zealand, for example. And so one of the things that I do tell voice actors, if you're going to make the choice to work internationally, because it can open you up to so many more opportunities, you just have to be aware that some countries, the rates are going to be very close to what you would get in North America. Some countries, the rates are going to be very far from what you would get in North America. And that's where we all have the choice. You know, the VOpreneur is the phrase that I have coined as a VOpreneur.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. So.
You get to choose who you want to work with and where you want to work. And so that's one of the things that we all have to be aware of. I mean, I'm not shy about the fact that as a Canadian, I focus a lot of my marketing efforts in the United States because the rates are better in the United States. And so why would I want to work in my own Canadian market exclusively? And I do work in this market, but if I have the opportunity to get better rates and earn more working in another country, why wouldn't I at that point, right?
I mean, I did a job for an event opening in Barcelona through a site called Voice Booking, which is in the Netherlands, I think. Here.
Okay.
And it was just 1 minute 30 seconds, and it paid me a lot more. Than what I would get for that 1 minute 30 seconds in India. And sometimes they send you an email saying, "Hey, it's a year buyout. How does this sound to you?" And I'm like, well, I'll take a pause and maybe email them back in a bit, but I'm like, yeah, that sounds really good. But you just don't get that in a place like India. And I was just, I just want to come to the point because you're a marketing coach as well for voiceover. And I've heard a bunch of other marketing coaches, listen to what they say in the United States, because that's a big thing out there. And a lot of them also say, well, it doesn't matter whether you have the best voice in the world. If you don't know how to market yourself, it means jack shit, if I can just say that.
Yep. No, that's a pretty fair assessment.
Which I'm kind of learning that, and I'm trying to also build myself up, and it's taking time, but I'm realized I may be talented than 100 people out there, but 99 of them may be making more than me because they know how to push their business.
Yep. I have said many, many times that I am absolutely not the best voice actor, not even close to being the best voice actor, but I know how to market myself. I know how to get myself in front of people. And the more people that I get in front of, I mean, it's the law of averages, right? The more people that I get in front of, ultimately, I'm going to find people who are going to want to hire me, because a lot of times people aren't looking for the best voice or a particular voice. They're just looking for somebody who can get their project done, maybe who can get it done quickly, maybe who can get it done for the budget, and a lot of places, casting directors don't mind going through a casting call, but Bob's Furniture Store, who needs a commercial to be on, the local TV station, he doesn't want to listen to 300 auditions from other voice actors. He just wants one that's good enough that he can put it on the air. And so if I can connect with enough of those people, I'm going to create opportunities for myself, because it just makes it easier, right? We're removing barriers at that point.
So how do you connect with someone like Bob? I mean, you don't have to tell me how you really connect, but how do you start by connecting, Bob, the furniture guy down the street?
I think
he's literally down the street. So how do you do that?
Yeah. I think there's a couple of different ways that you can do marketing. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about marketing is there's no one right way. And so I'm a huge fan of email marketing. And that is just a simple matter of, I will go out, I will find email addresses for these individuals, whoever they are. It's Bob, it's the local production company, whatever. I find an email address, I send them an email, I introduce myself, I try to determine whether or not there might be an opportunity for us to collaborate. I'm a big fan of using LinkedIn. I think that LinkedIn is one of the best and most powerful social media tools that are out there, because That is a network of professionals looking to connect with other professionals for professional purposes. And so
I have just opened up to the international voice world. I just started posting on LinkedIn just a few months ago, so I'm relatively, but I've actually been opened up to so much more. And I cannot believe the amount of international voice talent that is out there and the things that they have to say, including marketing coaches and people like that. So it's just exactly what you said.
Yeah, LinkedIn is an amazing place to get connected. You know, some of my most lucrative clients that I work with are clients that I've connected with over LinkedIn and you know, just started a conversation, built a relationship, and when the opportunities presented itself, I've been able to do the work. I'm working with one guy, I'm coaching somebody right now who he just really wanted to focus on his own local market, the city that he lives in the United States. And so one of the things that we talked about was literally just going door to door, walking through the front door of some of these stores and introducing himself to a manager or to the store owner or whatever, just having a conversation and then seeing where that develops. You know, maybe they're creating videos for social media. Maybe they're creating commercials for local radio or local television. And so having that conversation, getting a little bit of face-to-face time, already having the connection just because you're local and you live in the same community, right? And that's the beauty of this. There's so many different ways that you can do it. You can pick up a telephone and you can cold call, you can send an email, you can join your local chamber of commerce and start participating in networking groups with other local entrepreneurs and business owners. You can walk through the front door of their store. Like there's no one right way to do it, which means there's an opportunity for everybody based on your interests, your personality, you know, how you like to work. And that's the beauty of the marketing side of things, I think.
And what's the worst that can happen? No, right? And
they're already not hiring you, right?
They're already not hiring you.
Yeah. So you've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, it's not a personal rejection, which is the same thing in the acting business for auditioning and all that. I mean, they went with somebody else. It's not because you were bad. They went with somebody else for completely different reasons. And how important is in this post-pandemic now, especially, I know you've had for long, having your own website as a voiceover professional. I mean, I like the term pro voiceover when I speak to people now, when I speak to international, that's what you are. You're a pro voiceover, having your own website.
I think having your own website is absolutely essential. I mean, at least in the North American market, what is the very first thing that we do when we want to find out something about someone? We go to Google and we type their name. And whatever comes up on the first page of Google, that is how we form our opinion. That is how we find a business. That is how we source a service. That is how we get a product, whatever. We type it into Google and we click whatever comes up on the first page. And so I think
except for something you said, you don't click on the ads. You said that.
Don't click on the ads. That's right. If you're going to market, don't click on the ads. But I think that's where I do think it's absolutely essential for voice actors to have websites now, because how else is anybody going to know you? How are they going to be able to find out about you? I think you've got to have a place that you can direct people. So with my marketing efforts, whether that's through email marketing or social media, which are the two primary forms of marketing that I use for my business, my end objective is to get them to go to my website and listen to my demos. I feel like if I can get you interested enough that you'll go to my website, I feel confident that my demos can do the selling for me. And so once you're on my website, you get a chance to listen to my demos, you get a chance to hear my voice. Then hopefully at that point, you're going to be like, yeah, that's the guy I'm looking for. That's the voice I'm looking for. And then all the information that you need to be able to hire me is right there on my website, and quick and easy and simple. I think nowadays, if you search for a company, and I can speak to the North American market. If I go to search for a company, or I go to search for a product, a service, a brand, or whatever, and I can't find anything on the internet, I immediately question their legitimacy. And that's just a product of the world and the culture that we live in now. And so that's where I think having that website is so important. And here's the other thing. Odds are, even in India, again, maybe not, but you can answer this, but odds are there are a percentage of the voice actors, at least, that do have a website. And so that's your competition, right? That's your competition. And so if you can't be found and they can be found, you're already behind the 8 ball, so to speak, because now these other voice actors that do have websites, they're the first ones that are going to get contacted every single time.
Because they come up like anything on the internet. You have to come up on the first page.
Yep.
You got to, I mean, you got to come. I mean, whether you're on a P2P site, whether you're on one of the gig sites, you got to be found on the first page. Otherwise, well, they're going to go to someone else. And how much time do you spend uh, out of? I mean, how much time do you spend in the day or in the week marketing yourself, as I mean, in a percentage of voiceover and actual marketing?
I think the reality is that so much of what we're doing is marketing. And so every time I share something on Instagram, that's a form of marketing.
That's a marketing.
Every time I share a new post on LinkedIn that's putting me in front of people, that's a form of marketing. Sitting here with you right now, having this conversation and being a part of this amazing conference, this is a form of marketing for me for my coaching service. Every time I send an email, that's a form of marketing. And so I think throughout, I'm marketing all throughout my day. Now, it may not be that all throughout my day I'm making new contacts with brand new leads, but by constantly putting myself out there, by building my web presence, by making people aware of me, that is a form of marketing. And I think one of the things that I talk about is in the beginning, for me, my time was 100% marketing and 0% recording, because I didn't have any jobs. And so I literally, if I was in the office for 8 hours a day, I was contacting new leads. I was doing social media. I was building my presence. I was creating brand awareness. And so it was 100% marketing, 0% recording. And then over time, it becomes 90% marketing and 10% recording. And then eventually it gets to 70% marketing and 30% recording, until it gets to a point where it's like, okay, now I'm doing maybe 30% marketing and 70% recording. And maybe I'm marketing in different ways now. And so before, where I would send out emails all day long and connect with people individually all day long, now that my career has grown and now that I'm busier, now maybe that looks a little bit differently. Like for me, I use a lot of LinkedIn advertising, right? And so I can pay for a LinkedIn ad that's running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that becomes a form of marketing and new lead generation for me that frees up my time to spend more time in the booth working on projects. And so I think the bottom line is you've always got to be filling the pipeline. That's the rule. And so the pipeline is just bringing new leads into the mix, because again, if you get enough new leads into the mix, that's where the projects, the opportunities, the auditions are ultimately going to come from. So every day you've got to be doing something that is putting people into that pipeline.
Okay. And I know there's a bunch of stuff I want to ask you. We don't have that much time, but your views on voice actors getting their demos done. I know, I mean, 15, 20 years ago, you had to get a demo done, go to the professional studio, get that top-notch sound. But now, that's not going to be the same sound. If I go to a studio somewhere and I get a top level engineer and a top level studio, that's not the sound of my studio. I don't have that same mixing capability. I don't have the access to that sound, to the layers, to everything. So are those demos valid anymore? I mean, I've sent, from the work I've done, even my raw recordings, I've sent off for people, and people have gone, hey, we like this. We want it to sound like this. That's the style we want. So I just wanted to ask you what you thought about that, because there's a lot of money that goes into demo production, and there are a lot of voice actors who spend a lot of money on that, and sometimes there's absolutely no returns.
So, I mean, in the North American market, having a professional demo is absolutely key, because your top competition has professional demos. And if you if you can't line up, with them and what they're able to do, you're already at a disadvantage. One of the shifts that has taken place in this market, though, is those professional demos, generally speaking, get recorded in your studio. So I can work with a reputable, respected demo producer, but we can use a tool like Source Connect, for example.
Source Connect, yes.
Yeah. So I'm in my studio recording my voiceover in my studio. So it is a reflection of my sound and what I'm able to deliver. On the production side, in North America, most people don't expect you to be able to do the production, right? So when I record voiceovers, I'm literally just recording a voiceover and sending a voiceover file. I'm not almost never am I asked to do the full-blown production, right? Add in the
Right.
sound effects and
It's
music
true.
beds and all of that sort of stuff. So I don't have to worry about that here. But I do think, like, if I guess the easiest way I could explain it is if you're going to buy a new product off of Amazon, what's the very first thing that you do before you make a purchase on a site like Amazon? You look at the pictures and you read the reviews because you want to
Yes.
determine,
That's
is
right.
this project or is this product legitimate? You know, are people by and large happy with this project? You need some form of proof
Validation. Yeah.
that this thing is what it says it is and that it can do what it says it can do. That's what your demo is, right? If I go on to your website and there are no demos, then I don't know if you can actually do voiceover. So why would I take a chance hiring you? If I go onto your website and you've got demos that have been recorded in a home studio that doesn't sound great and there's no production value to it, that creates an impression for me as a buyer of what you are capable of doing. If I go onto your website and I hear demos that have got top quality production, that have got really clean professional sound, that have been nominated for an award or something like that, that tells me something. That says, oh, this person is obviously legitimate. This person's the real deal, right? And so there's your demos and your website, in my opinion, are your two most important marketing tools. And I think and again, speaking to the North American market, if you invest in good quality demos, that is going to create the return for your investment in your voiceover business, because without them, I don't know that you can book in this market.
Right. So I'm kind of blessed, a little lucky that what I have as my demos essentially from is actual work.
Yep.
Over the years. I mean, so I've just pulled those films off because they were actual TV ads.
Yep.
They were actual cinema ads. So I put them all together, and that goes as my demo, which is I never personally actually produced a demo for myself, but I use the work that I've done. And if it's actual work that's out there and well produced work, then I pull it out and I use that as my demo.
Absolutely.
Would that be a fair thing to do as well?
Oh, I think there's a lot of voice actors that do that. I think the deciding factor is, and you mentioned it, it's professionally produced, right? Because I've done voiceovers for projects before where once I've sent my audio file, I've gone online and I found the finished project and I've been like, what did you do to this? Like, because it sounds absolutely terrible, right? Somebody who's not an engineer, who's trying to pretend to be an engineer, doing terrible things with, because they can play with settings on Adobe Audition or something. And so in that case, it's of no use to me. I would never want to use it. But if you're booking work that's getting top quality production behind it, it's national commercials and all of that sort of stuff, then yeah, absolutely, you can use that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
samples on your website and whatnot.
When I was just fooling around with trying to work out a space, and I had a tiny, and I put cushions everywhere, and I mean, I did a BMW ad with an SM58.
Yep.
With cushions around me.
Yep.
I mean, well, I didn't do that, but they took that. They said, okay, that's fine. And suddenly that ad was on TV, and I'm like, whoa, if anybody knew, now they do. But I'm just saying that. So it's amazing what an engineer can do with your voice.
One of the things that I love joking about is in voice actors, and again, speaking to the North American market, we love our studios, right? And we spend a crap ton of money on our studios here, right? You go out and you buy a $15,000. You spend $15,000 on a Whisper Room or Studio Bricks. Yep. You spend $5,000 on a Neumann U87, right? And before long, you've got $35,000 wrapped up in your home studio. But then you go to a conference on a weekend, you go to VO Atlanta, you go to, India Voice Fest. And what do? We put an ironing board on the desk, we throw the bed sheet over it, we tuck some pillows in, and we all post pictures of ourselves recording voiceovers in our hotel rooms. And so I always think
I've done that many. I have a separate setup for traveling, and I've had to deliver stuff while going, and it's been really difficult, but
but you do it, and it sounds good enough.
I manage it. No, and there's something really cool about being able to do that as well. Mm-hmm. There's a guy. I mean, I follow on LinkedIn as well. Thomas Imaging, Sandy, is it? I think. he used to be huge radio voice as well. I think he used to be the voice of Fear Factor and all that as well.
Okay. Yep.
And he had posted a post saying that he was traveling and he had to do this, and he did this on his iPhone, and he put out the finished product.
Yep.
And he said, you know what, it can be done.
It can be
if you really have to. But that's years of experience coming in to also understand.
And that's
how to get there.
That's so true, but it does just go to show you that, you know, we spend all of this money on our studios, and we brag about what equipment we've got and what microphones. I mean, my booth is over here. I've got a U87, I've got a 416, I've got a custom built booth that I designed for myself. But I've also recorded
stuff,
but I have also absolutely, you know, last week I was away, and I set up the ironing board on the desk in the hotel room, and I recorded in the hotel room, and my client cannot tell the difference between when I'm recording in a hotel in the most crappy and awkward looking setup ever and recording in my beautiful custom home studio. And so that tells you something, doesn't it?
You don't travel with the U87, do you?
That's why I have the 416. I love the 416.
You have the Sennheiser. You have the 416, which is that's a good one for traveling, is it? I mean,
absolutely.
It's still a condenser, but it's still, because it's a shotgun, right?
It's a shotgun mic, and so it's very, very forgiving of the space, right? And so whereas the U87 will pick up everything around you.
Yeah. Which is why it's a studio mic. Studio mic.
Yes. The 416 just picks up what's right in front of you, and so as long as you can control any sound bounce in the room, which is, again, that's with, you know, the ironing board and the pillow fort and that whole thing, you can control the sound bounce around you. Then you can record with the U87. I've recorded with the U87. I recorded a commercial with the 416. I recorded the commercial in the back seat of a car on an interstate pullout in Tennessee once before. Because I needed to get the job done. I literally just pulled off the side of the highway and sat in the back seat of the car and tucked a couple of pillows up in the window, recorded with my 416.
Yeah, because you can't do that.
The client couldn't tell the difference. They had no idea. So the right microphone makes a big difference.
No, I think that's a really cool thing to hear for everybody, that it's not always just about, it's not necessarily about the mic. It's also what you can do with the mic, in both ways. There's no point getting a U87 if you just can't use it, or you don't have the surroundings for it.
I did not start out with that equipment. And that's the thing. Like, I started out with an EV RE20, which is generally considered to be the worst voiceover mic. Yeah,
the Electro Voice.
The Electro Voice RE20. I mean, you see them in radio studios and stuff, but it's generally assumed to be one of the worst microphones for voiceover. But that's what I started with because I didn't know any better. I was recording in the living room of my apartment. Like, I did not have a treated space. I did not get my 416 until I was making $100,000 a year doing voiceover. Like, I started out in my living room, and then eventually I upgraded my apartment and I got a spare bedroom, and I was able to build a studio space in a spare bedroom. And, you know, now, you know, a bunch of years later, now I'm in a house and I have a custom built studio, and it's amazing and I love it. And it's mostly just about comfort than it is anything else, because I proved to myself, like, I built a 6-figure business recording in a space that I should not have been able to record voiceovers in, but you find a way to make it work. You get resourceful because you got to do what you got to do.
And that is the story of, I think, a lot of voice actors, artists around the world. You know, they did what they have to do, and they started working in a space where anybody probably thought it would not be possible. Yep. I mean, if I tell you which mic I travel with, I get it done. But it's actually just it's like an $80 mic. I travel with it, but it gets my job done.
It gets the job done.
I have a different one in the booth, but it gets my and it's a sturdy one, so it doesn't get knocked around. When you travel, you're always worrying that something's going to happen to something.
Yep.
But again, I get it done when I travel, and I really, really enjoy that aspect. I've enjoyed learning in the last year, like you said. You've also learned the engineering part. I started on Audacity, which I'm sure a lot of, you know, because that's what you Google first. Free.
Yep, absolutely.
Audio recording software, you know.
Yep.
I tried Adobe Audition for a while, and I also have a license for Reaper, and I use PreSonus Studio One now,
Yep.
which I have a license on. I really enjoy that. But I actually took courses to learn
Yeah.
how to use that for voiceover. I did actual courses for that.
And that's something I think is really important. And I think that's the one aspect of this business that never changes, right? I consider myself to be a successful voice actor. I'm a coach now, like I teach marketing, but I still do performance coaching every year. I still make investments every year to work with coaches for particular genres, or to work on my technique, or to make sure that I'm current with trends. Like, I am constantly investing in my learning.
You're learning with other coaches every year as well.
Yep,
Is
absolutely.
that correct?
I think it's really important that that never stops, because the industry is constantly evolving, right? The voiceover read that worked 5 years ago is not the voiceover read that works today. And so
No.
if you're not staying on top of trends, and if you're not constantly working on keeping up with what's booking, then you start to fall behind. And I think that for any voice actor, if you start to see the auditions declining, or your booking ratio starting to drop, the very first thing I think anybody should be doing is contacting a coach and saying, okay, it's time to freshen up. It's time to figure out what's booking today. It's time to see what people want today, so that you can adjust your reads. And I think that goes on the performance side. But I mean, I still learn new stuff on the tech side. I'm still learning new techniques for editing, and I'm learning new ways to make my sound better all the time. Like, it's a process that never ever ends for me.
Yeah, a new plugin every once in a while, which you think will work. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure you got a bunch of plugins by now.
Oh, we've all made investments in equipment that was going to be the difference maker in our business, that now just sits on a shelf somewhere and collects dust. So,
if you were, from your point of view, you've got your own coaching business. You have your own, you have your YouTube channel where you also post a bunch. You have your Friday questions as well. I think
Yep.
You do things like that. If people from India were to approach you for coaching, would that make sense from a perspective of still being a different country? The things that you teach, would that be applicable to anywhere, because it's business?
I think the foundational principles of marketing are pretty universal. I think when you understand the foundational principles of marketing, I think that applies no matter where. I think it's how you specifically apply some of those foundational principles. And so the way that I write an email in the United States or in Canada might not be the same way that I would write an email in India, or the social media platform of choice, right? In North America, everybody's using LinkedIn, but maybe in another country, they're using something different. Like, I know in South America, for example, if I try to do email marketing in South America, I'm probably going to get minimal results at best, because everybody there prefers to use WhatsApp. And so it's
the same thing here. Yeah.
Yeah. And WhatsApp, so I think that's part of it, is just learning the techniques and learning those little idiosyncrasies of one country to the next, and what they prefer and how they prefer it to work. But I think once you figure out some of that stuff, if you have a foundational understanding of marketing, then you can just figure out how to apply it to your specific use case.
There's one thing you said on one of your YouTube shorts as well, which is one of the most important things for you to grow your voiceover business. Again, something that I'm having to learn as well, is accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's really easy to have a lot of big ideas. It's really easy to have big goals. It's really easy to have good intentions. Many of us have the best intentions of all of the things that we're going to do. But if we don't have some sort of a form of accountability to make sure that we actually do those things, more often than not, the things don't get done. And accountability can look like a lot of different things. I mean, I recently went on a weight loss journey, and on that weight loss journey, accountability for me came in the form of a couple of different apps that I was using to track my weight every day, and to track my the food that I was eating every day, and holding me accountable to doing the things that I was supposed to be doing. In my voiceover business, I've got groups of people that I work with, and we meet once a month, and we outline what our goals are for the month, and then we check in with each other throughout the month to make sure that we're doing the things that we say that we're going to do. I've created accountability for myself in the past by, maybe I'm working on a new class, but I haven't got the new class developed yet. I will go online and I will say, I'm going to be teaching this class on such and such a date at such and such a time, and it's for sale now. And as soon as the first person buys that class, I've now created accountability. I got to get this thing done. I need to make sure that I do what I said I'm going to do so that I can deliver. And so there's all kinds of ways that you can build accountability in. But I do think it's really important. And I think particularly in the voiceover industry, which can be a very lonely and isolating industry, especially now that we don't go to studios all the time, right? We work from home, we record by ourselves, we're in the booth by ourselves, we literally spend all day talking to ourselves. And so having some form of outside accountability, not only just to make sure that you achieve your goals, but also to have people that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can have people who can support you, who can encourage you, that you can support, that you can encourage. I think those things are really, really important. And I think if you look at any successful entrepreneur, regardless of what space they're in, voiceover or anything otherwise, I think you'll always find that accountability is one of the things that has been built into their success.
And when you were starting out, how did you apply the accountability yourself over that? Now, of course, it's easier to contact people. You said you have the apps, things like that. Because of social media, it's easier to get in touch with groups as well.
Yep.
At that time, you must have been on your own.
Yeah, in the beginning I was, and I these are lessons that I've learned along the way, and I guess that's the advantage of hindsight, right? I've been doing voiceover full time for 10 years, which doesn't feel like a long time, but at the same time, it has been a long time, and the lessons that I have learned, because I never stop learning. I am constantly reading books, taking classes, and not voiceover books and classes. I'm talking business, marketing, goal setting, productivity, self-help, all of that sort of stuff. I'm just constantly learning and trying to find ways to improve as an individual and as a business owner. And accountability was one of those lessons that I was missing out in the beginning. And so being able to figure that out and being able to find ways to implement that into my business has definitely been a difference maker for me.
And even after all the years now, do you still have those days where you just think, man, it doesn't sound when you're recording? I had that like 2 or 3 days ago where I just couldn't. I was doing a 15-minute recording, I think, and I just couldn't get the first paragraph out.
Yep.
It was. I don't know what we hear, but if you've got the HD, if you've got the Audio Technica or the Sennheisers, I don't know whether we hear more in our heads, and then later on when you hear it, when most people are listening on a phone or somewhere else, you're going, that doesn't sound like that at all. What I was hearing, all the stuff that was going on, I don't hear any of that.
Yep.
And then it starts playing with your brain. So I was just wondering whether things like that happen, because it really hit me hard the other day when I really had to fight my way through my first paragraph, and eventually did. I could flow. And I mean, in spite of all the years, do you still get days like that?
Oh, 100%. I don't think that's something that ever goes away or that ever stops. And there are days when it's more psychological than it is anything, right? If you're not in a good headspace when you walk into the booth because whatever, you had a bad day, something's going on in your personal life, whatever it is. I mean, we carry all of those things into the booth. And I mean, that's why I teach a lot about mindset, because it's so important. But I absolutely have days when I walk in the booth and just bomb. And maybe that's where it's like, okay, you know what? I just can't even bother doing this right now. I go out for a walk, or I get on the treadmill, or, do something, go watch a show, go read a book, do something just to try to clear my head, and then try to come back and give it another shot. Because that's the other thing. The longer that you stay in the booth when it's not working, the more frustrated you get. And the more frustrated you get, the worse the problem becomes. And so one of the things you've got to absolutely do is just know when it's time to walk away and take a break, whether that's for 5 minutes or an hour or whatever. But yeah, I don't, maybe that's something that goes away eventually, but I haven't got there yet. I definitely still have some days when I walk into the booth and I'm like, well, I stink at this. Why are people paying me for this?
It's literally what happened. But on the plus side, because you have your booth, you can actually walk away as well.
That's right. Yes.
Unfortunately, in the studio days, if you suck, then you suck then.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it was a
it's
bad day.
definitely a
But
different situation. Yeah.
that's exactly what I mean. The way I looked at it in the earlier days when you were having tough days with the clients, you really, really had to adjust that.
Yep.
And it's what I did the other night. I just got up, I just walked around, I just took a breather,
Yep.
and I came back and did that. Yeah. What is your advice for people who are looking to start off in this business? I think, like I said, most of us accidentally fall into this. I believe after the pandemic, I think there's a bunch of people in the world who go, I can do voiceover,
Yeah. Yep.
because that was maybe the easiest thing to say. I can get a mic, I can do that, and I can earn money online.
Yep. Yep.
And it's not as easy as it is. Like you said, you don't have to have the most perfect voice, but what is your advice for people starting out in this day and age?
I think the number one way that you are going to find success is by recognizing that you are starting a business. And I think that's where a lot of voice actors fall short. We look at just the recording side of things. Oh, I've got a good voice and I can do that and I can go in the booth and I can record. But the reality is you are starting a business. And I don't know of any business that you can start and run successfully without some form of investment and experience and knowledge, right? Just because you have a wrench doesn't make you a plumber. Just because you
No.
have a scalpel doesn't make you a surgeon. Just because you have a microphone doesn't make you a voice actor. And so I think you have to recognize that you're starting a business and there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. I think that the more that you can invest in your business up front, the better your chances of success. Like there are things that go into this. Like you have to have, you talked earlier about, I got to know how to be an editor. I got to have some basic audio engineering skills, and there are performance skills that you need to have, and acting ability that you need to have. And I think being able to make investments in all of those things, and maybe you can't do it all at once, but recognizing what the priorities are and planning to continue to invest over time. I mean, my first few years, a percentage of every voiceover check that I got, a percentage went into a separate bank account, and that was money that was reinvested back into my business, whether that was for another class or working with the coach or putting it towards a demo or whatever. So I think that's the one thing is just recognizing that you're starting a business and you're going to have to know how to do marketing, and you're going to have to know how to do basic bookkeeping, and you're going to have to know how to do invoicing, and you're going to have to do customer service, and you're going to have some basic web skills for delivering files, and you're going to have a form of tracking your day and making sure that you're not missing priority items and all of that sort of stuff. So I think all of that goes into it. And the other thing I always really encourage people with is to study entrepreneurship, because I think when we come into voiceover, our first and most obvious point is to start studying voiceover. We buy voiceover books, we listen to voiceover podcasts, we watch YouTube videos about voiceover, we attend voiceover conferences, and it's all voiceover, voiceover, voiceover. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be a successful business owner, then you have to understand the business side of things as well. And that's where the VOpreneur thing comes in, right? When I'm reading, when I'm listening to podcasts, when I'm watching YouTube videos, they're not voiceover related. They're marketing related. They're sales related.
I actually switched, but in the last 2 years, to actually looking at all the marketing side, the mind side of it, all those aspects. And I mean, to be honest, this is a business where there is no school for voiceover. There is, people just are voice. There is no right way. There's no wrong way, because somebody prefers the way you read, like you said, and somebody prefers somebody else. You may be the most perfect, but hey, I just like the way you say the line. That's all that matters. And when you trawl the net, there's just so much about it. And whenever people say we'll give you voiceover coaching and how to do voiceover, I tend to go away from that, because that's really difficult to. You can just teach. You can teach the basics of that, but somebody will have to learn how to read a script. You can't teach people that. They will learn how to break it down, how to understand the words written down there, how to say that. And we just don't have the base for, as in a voiceover school academies, things like that. So when people are starting out, it gets really, really confusing. So it's great to see people like you who are teaching, like you said, it's a business.
Yep.
I'm learning the hard way as well, but it really, really is a business, and you need people to kind of guide you through this in the same way as if you were going to business school, or
Yep.
you're doing an MBA. um, I would believe that is one of the most important parts of the business now to
Yep.
learn in
Yeah,
this day and age,
for sure.
especially when, like you said, the world is your oyster.
Yep. And I think that is a huge part of it, is just recognizing that side of it. And that's one of the shifts that has taken place, right? Once upon a time, not all that long ago, if you wanted to do voiceover, you just had to get a good demo and then find a good agent. And then they took care of the rest. You were just responsible for showing up for auditions when they told you to show up for auditions. But the reality is, for most voice actors today, that is not the way the industry works anymore. And so that is where you have to take ownership and responsibility in the business that you're going to create for yourself. And what I love about it, and like any entrepreneurial adventure, you can make as much money as you want or as little money as you want. You can invest as much time as you want or as little time as you want. You get that choice, right? If you've only got 5 hours a week to give to this and you're just looking to make a little bit of extra money to supplement an income, you can build a business that looks that way. But if you want to do this full time and you want to make $250,000 a year, ultimately you can build a business that allows you the ability to do that. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. But in order to do that successfully in voiceover, you have to understand more than just the voiceover side of things.
Yeah, I think that's what by talking to, and also for everybody listening, I think I really wanted to hear you say that to everybody, as that this is the whole other side of voicing. It's not just that, it's not just the magic mic, if you excuse the pun. It's not that there's a naked person running around, but a mic and an interface are just not going to cut.
I mean, Ashwin has been such a fantastic moderator, or a fantastic co-panelist to get the best out
I
of you
I, I
and to
actually
share.
came, I came into this thinking, well, should I list? Then I thought, no, I'll just start. I'll introduce Marc, and we'll just see where it goes, because we never met actually. For me to suddenly present questions and see what he has to say, and also my thoughts on it as well. But it was great talking to her. And Marc, before you also finish, just tell everybody where they can find you, because hey, this is marketing as well, where they can find you, and what are the coaching services you also provide. Like you said, that it's also a foundation. If anybody ever wishes to get, hey, you may be a voiceover guy in India, you might just move to the United States, get in touch with Marc. You never know. So yeah, where can they find you?
Yeah, my website is marcscottcoaching.com. All the classes and coaching that I offer is available there. And vopreneur.com is the website for the podcast. That's also available wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Google, Amazon, wherever you enjoy podcasts. And that podcast it expands on what we've talked about today, which it's just on the business and marketing side of voiceover exclusively. I'm not going to teach you how to read a script. I'm not going to teach you how to make the booth work. I'm just going to teach you the business and marketing side of it. So that's what the VOpreneur podcast is.
I like to hear something like that.
Yeah,
that's how it's
Splendid,
said.
splendid.
So
Marc.
it's great talking to you, Marc. Thank you so much for taking out the time, and thank
Yeah.
you for being so patient while I thought of things to ask you. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. This has been a lot of fun, and hopefully everybody that's watching has learned a few things. Appreciate it.
I'm sure that I have. So
Lovely, lovely. Marc, thank you so much for your time, and thank you especially for the very, very practical insights, for a wonderful worldview about how things happen, your side of the world. And also, I think this special focus on voiceover marketing, which I think, especially in India, we still are in a very nascent stage when it comes to marketing ourselves as voiceover artists. So I think everything that you said absolutely was bang on, as they say, and people are thoroughly enjoying this discussion, as I can see from the comments, and rightly so. And Ashwin, thank you so much for being such a wonderful co-panelist to get the best out of Marc, which is as important as what Marc has shared with us. And Marc, thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks you so much. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your conference, everybody. Thank you.